As bailiff, you are an important part of your team during the competition. It will be your responsibility to get the courtrooms prepared for each round, to get the judges into the courtrooms for the rounds, to keep time for your speakers, to collect the judges' ballots when they have finished scoring the round, and to represent your team in the tally room in determining the outcome of the round. You play an important role in the overall experience your team will have during the competition. Prior to arrival at the competition, you should read the bailiff's guidelines in the NAAC rules and review the sample ballots attached to those rules. Any mistakes or errors you make in fulfilling your responsibilities might result in penalties to your team or, in the worst case scenario, result in your team losing a round it should otherwise have won. You should take your role very seriously. Before each oral argument round, your responsibilities as the bailiff will turn on whether you are the bailiff for the petitioning team or the respondent team. If you are the bailiff for the petitioning team, it will be your responsibility to pick up the round folders where designated by the competition administrators prior to the round. Petitioner's bailiff and respondent's bailiff will then meet outside the assigned courtroom for the round and fill out the ballots and the bailiff worksheet for that round. Both bailiffs will make sure that each ballot contains the name of the designated speaker for that team as well as the team number. Each of the ballots in the round folder should be filled out that way. After the ballots have been completed by both bailiffs, the ballots should be placed at the spots on the bench where chairs for judges have been positioned. You may not know before each round exactly how many judges you will have during the round, but you should fill out all ballots that are in the round folder and put them on the bench at the appropriate places before the round. Once you have finished with the ballots, the petitioner's bailiff is responsible for meeting the judges at the judges' room about 10 minutes before the round is supposed to begin. Although it's the petitioner's responsibility to retrieve the judges for each round, competition administrators would strongly encourage the respondent's bailiff to accompany the petitioner's bailiff in retrieving the judges. It is critical that you be at the judges' room when told by the competition administrators in order for the competition to run in a timely manner. The exact time you are supposed to be there will vary from region to region depending on the layout of the courthouse and other logistical concerns. But the administrators will inform you at the team meeting and the bailiff's meeting what their expectations are. When the competition administrators have delivered your panel of assigned judges to you, it is your responsibility then to guide those judges to your assigned courtroom. It is appropriate for you to introduce yourselves to the judges during this process and make conversation with those judges, but at no time during this process shall you indicate to the judges where your team is from or where the other team is from, and you must be careful not to imply that you are from anywhere. For example, mentioning that you had a foot of snow where you lived prior to leaving for the competition might suggest a geographical location of your school, your team. You should avoid making references to things that might imply where you are from. Make sure any folders or other materials you have with you do not identify your school. And make sure that your speakers, the materials your speakers take with them to counsel's table, likewise do not contain any school identification information. Once you have picked up the judges at the judges' room, you may not have any contact with the speakers on your team. That also includes no passing notes to your team as you enter the courtroom with the judges. For example, you are not permitted to pass along information as to the names of the judges on your panel to your team members after you've picked up the judges. In rounds where there is more than one heat, the bailiffs will meet their judges at the assigned courtroom prior to the second heat. If you are bailiffing a team arguing in a second heat of a round, you will not pick your judges up at the judges' room. You will meet them outside the courtroom where your team has been assigned to argue. When you arrive at the courtroom with your judges, the respondent's bailiff will enter and take his or her seat. The petitioner's bailiff will then oyez the judges into the room for the formal start of the round. When the chief judge calls the case and the first speaker begins her presentation, your role as bailiff from that point on during the round will be to time your speakers. You'll be provided with time cards that you may use to inform the judges and the speaking members of the amount of time left during each speaker's presentation. When the time allocated to a speaker has expired, as the bailiff for that team, you will stand up holding the stop card and display it to all in the courtroom. Make sure the judges are aware of the fact that the speaker's time has expired by pointing the stop card at the bench as well as the speakers. Remain standing until the speaker has left the podium. Although it is your primary responsibility to keep track of time for your team, you may also want to keep time when the opposing team speakers are making their presentations as well. When the speakers have finished their presentations, including any rebuttal by the petitioner, it is your responsibility as the bailiffs to clear the courtrooms of all people, leaving the judges behind to fill out their ballots. You, the team members, and anyone accompanying your team will wait outside of the courtroom during this process. The judges are not to be disturbed during this scoring process. Depending on the courthouse, the administrators will instruct you on how to determine when the judges have completed filling out the ballots and scoring the round. You will follow the administrator's instructions with respect to this at each regional. When the judges have signaled to you that they have completed the scoring process, both bailiffs will enter the courtroom and retrieve the ballots from the judges. But before leaving the courtroom, it is your responsibility to review those ballots and make sure that the judges have scored in conformity with the rules for scoring a round. That means that you need to make sure that the scores for each judge, for each category, or as indicated on the ballot, the box, are within the appropriate range of points for each one of those categories or boxes. If any score in a box is outside, either below the minimum score for that box or above the maximum score for that box, you need to present that ballot to the judge who filled it out and point out to the judge that the score is not in conformity with the range for that box. Allow the judge to make whatever changes the judge needs to make at that point in time to bring the score within that box into conformity with the requirements. Also, at this time when you're reviewing the ballots, make sure that you and the opposing bailiff can read the numbers. That is, make sure there are no numbers recorded on the ballot that are not legible. Also, make sure each judge has filled in a score for each of the boxes for each of the speakers on the ballot. If a number is not legible, present that ballot to the judge and ask the judge to correct the problem. If a judge has failed to fill out a box, return that ballot to the judge and point that out as well. Once you've satisfied yourselves that the ballots have been properly filled out, that the numbers are legible, and that the boxes all contain scores, leave the courtroom with the ballots and let your teams and any persons accompanying your teams return to the courtroom for the critique. The bailiffs do not stay in the courtroom for the critique. You need to immediately bring the ballots to the tally room as designated by the competition administrators. Once at the tally room, you will begin the process of tallying the scores for the round to determine the outcome of that round. Competition administrators will be in the tally room to oversee the process and answer any questions about that process that you may have. But the administrators will not check your math. And so when you are filling out the tally sheets, it's important that you record your team's scores accurately and that you carefully make all calculations necessary to complete the tally sheet. Any errors you make when filling out the tally sheets will not be corrected or adjusted, even if the error is outcome determinative. In other words, any mistake you make filling out the tally sheet could cost your team a round it otherwise would have won. Once you've completed filling out the tally sheet, and make sure you fill out the top box on the tally sheet, which indicates which team was the winner and the margin of victory and loss. Each bailiff will sign the tally sheet. When the tally sheet is signed, the tally sheet is final. No changes will be made. At this point, take pictures of your ballots and the tally sheet, and then return the ballots, the tally sheet, and the round folder to the administrators who are present in the tally room. You may then return to your team at the courtroom or what other designated location in the courthouse you have agreed to meet them at. Your responsibilities for the round are now completed, but they begin again for the next round your team is scheduled to argue.